In engineering physics, as an extension to radioactivity, we are discussing interaction of radiation with matter, wherein when we looked at interaction of gamma rays with matter, we understood that gamma rays have energies that are characteristic of radioactive decay that produced them. Measurement of these energies provides a useful method of identifying the type of radioactivity in a sample. Gamma rays penetrate to great depths in materials, and no amount of absorber can completely stop all of the gamma radiation. What is usually done in practice is to use sufficient thickness of an absorber to reduce the radiation level to an acceptable value. The total attenuation coefficient for a gamma ray or an X-ray traveling through a medium has contributions from scattering, photoelectric absorption, and paired production process. For this purpose or purposes, the photonuclear and other such small effects are neglected. Now we shall discuss the main process of interaction like Compton scattering, photoelectric absorption, paired production in detail now. Schematically, Compton scattering can be shown like this. In this case, an incident ray scatters from an outer shell electron in the absorber material at an angle theta, and some of the gamma ray energy is imparted to the electron. Conservation of energy and momentum leads us to an expression for energy of the scattered photon. In that energy, if you take energy of the incident radiation is taken as E gamma, energy of scattered electron is taken as E dash gamma, the scattering angle is theta, and the rest mass energy of electron is taken as m naught c square. From this, energy conservation and momentum lead us to arrive at the formula something like this. E dash gamma equal to E gamma divided by 1 plus E gamma by m naught c square into 1 minus cos theta. Here E gamma is the incident photon energy, E dash gamma is the energy of the scattered photon, theta is the angle of scattering or scattering angle what we call, and m naught c square is the electron rest mass energy. Now the kinetic energy of the electron after the collision we can calculate as Te is equal to E gamma minus E dash gamma. So we can calculate the expression as E gamma square into 1 minus cos theta by m naught c square plus E gamma into 1 minus cos theta. Now here it can be seen that since all scattering angles are possible, the electron energy ranges from different parameters, something like this. Electron energy range from 0 for theta equal to 0 to 2E gamma square divided by m naught c square plus 2E gamma for theta equal to 180. And the photon never loses the whole of its energy in any one collision. The scattered photon can then continue through the absorber and interact again or scatter out of the absorber material completely. So this process where the scattered photon escapes is very important for the gamma ray spectroscopist. If the full energy of the incident photon is not absorbed in the detector, then there is a continuous background in the energy spectrum, which is what is known as Compton continuum. This continuum extends up to an energy corresponding to the maximum energy transfer, where there is a sharp cutoff point, what is known as Compton edge. What we have to remember here is gamma rays penetrate to great depths in materials, and no amount of absorber can completely stop all the gamma radiation. Compton scattering is the most probable process for photons in the intermediate energy range, and the probability decreases rapidly with increasing energy. So this probability is also dependent on the number of electrons available for the photons to scatter and therefore it increases with the increasing of atomic number. Similarly, when you look at the other process, what is known as photoelectronic or photoelectric absorption, the process is schematically shown here. An incident photon is completely absorbed by an atom in the absorber material, and one of the atomic electrons is ejected. So, this ejected electron is what is known as photoelectron. The electron must be found to the atom to conserve the energy and momentum. In that context, the kinetic energy of the photoelectron can be given as TE equal to E gamma minus BE, or TE is equal to H nu minus BE. Here BE is the binding energy of the atomic electron. The vacancy left in the atomic structure by the ejected electron is filled by one of the electrons from higher shell. So this transition is accompanied by an emission of X-rays. These X-rays are also absorbed by the detector. So photoelectric absorption is the most favorable process for gamma ray spectroscopist, because the incident photon deposits all of its energy into the detector. But it is dominant only for low energy photons, that means where the energy is less than 200 keV. So the interaction is again dependent upon the atomic number Z, and an approximate expression for the absorption probability is given by T is proportional to Z power n by E gamma 3.5. Here n is a constant that normally lies between 4 and 5 depending on the absorber material. So this dependence on Z explains the choice of higher Z materials like lead for shielding purposes. This is what we need to know about photoelectric absorption. Let us look at the third process, namely pair production. Soon after the discovery of positron by Anderson in 1932, Dirac's quantum theory was extended, which predicted that if a high energy photon whose energy is the order of 1.02 MeV or even higher comes close enough to the nucleus of an atom, the electric field of the nucleus at such distance would be so strong enough to annihilate the gamma ray and create in its place a pair of particles, that is an electron and a positron. These two particles, according to the theory, should have exactly same mass and equal but opposite charges. Blackett, Anderson and other scientists looking for such pairs found this exactly as predicted by Dirac's theory. Gamma rays from a radioactive element while passing through the matter were observed to produce pairs of electron and positron. When an electron-positron pair is created, conservation of energy and momentum requires the two particles to move in almost one straight direction without magnetic field applied to the cloud chamber. The particles travel side by side in almost parallel paths. But with a magnetic field, the position of positron bends to one side and that of the electron bends to the other side. This is with magnetic field. This is without magnetic field. So the pair of electron and positron is very unstable, because as soon as a positron meets with an electron, the two get annihilated. Because a positron can annihilate an electron, this is what is called antiparticle of an electron. This is what we need to understand. Various series of experiments conducted by scientists indicate that all electrons and positrons spin around an axis through their center of mass. There is a good evidence that when a positron and an electron come close together, they frequently combine by revolving around each other like a double star with their spin axes parallel to each other. Such a pair of electron and positron before annihilation is what is called positronium. Positronium is very short-lived, because as soon as electron and positron combine, they annihilate to give two gamma photons which are emitted in opposite directions to conserve the momentum, like the one shown here. So based on this, the energetics of pair of production can be calculated as, with h nu as the frequency of incident photons. Similar, like a gamma ray has an energy greater than 1.02 MeV, with TE minus and TE plus representing the kinetic energies of electron and positron, and m0 c square as the rest mass energy of electron or positron equal to 0.5 MeV. The energetics of the pair production can be represented in the formula like this: h nu equal to m0 c square plus TE minus plus m0 c square plus TE plus. This is how we represent the energetics of the pair production. The probability of occurrence of the pair production and other phenomenon, that is photoelectric effect and Compton scattering by alpha ray photon, depends on the value of Z for absorber and the energy of incident gamma photon. This is what we need to understand about pair production. Let us understand how do we look at, based on these three processes, something what is called attenuation coefficients. As we might be expected, the interactions of gamma rays varies depending on the matter in which the interactions take place. Now here we have shown the variation can be described as a function of the atomic number of the material, with energy in MeV on x-axis and attenuation coefficient on y-axis. This is basically, attenuation coefficient is represented by the alphabet mu. This is for a sample of germanium as a function of photon energy, and other components are also shown here. Now this shows linear attenuation coefficients for the three main interaction processes, and within the germanium crystal, the total linear attenuation coefficient, as I told you, is represented as the alphabet mu. Now you have three processes. One is called Compton scattering. Attenuation coefficient of Compton scattering shown as mu Cs. Attenuation coefficient of photoelectric effect is shown as mu Pe. Attenuation coefficient of pair production is shown as mu Pp. So therefore, the total linear attenuation coefficient mu total is given by sum of all the three, where this mu Pe, mu Cs and mu Pp are the attenuation coefficients for the photoelectric effect, Compton scattering and pair production. The intensity I of a gamma ray absorbed within the material then naturally becomes I equal to I naught into e power minus mu total x. Earlier it is my name x, now it is my mu total x, where I naught is the incident gamma ray energy and x is the distance travelled within the absorber. Now from this we can observe that the Compton scattering is the most important process for the gamma ray energies involved in the range between 0.1 to 1 MeV. Linear attenuation coefficients for each of these three main processes are plotted against gamma ray energy for germanium. The total attenuation coefficient is also known as mu Cs, mu Pe, mu Pp and mu total. These are the attenuation coefficients for the Compton scattering, photoelectric effect and pair production and the total. Clear? Whenever electrons are interacting with the matter, two different types of interactions of electrons occur with the matter. One is called elastic interaction, the other is called inelastic interaction. When you look at elastic interaction, no energy is transferred from the electron to the sample. The electron either passes without any interaction, which is called direct beam, or electron is scattered by the positive potential inside the electron cloud. These signals are mainly exploited in TEM and electron diffraction. But when you look at inelastic interactions, here in this case, the energy is transferred from the incident electrons to the sample. Secondary electrons, phonons, UV quanta, or cathodoluminescence is produced, shooting out the inertial electrons leading to the emission of X-rays or Auger electrons. These signals are used in analytical electron microscopy. So when you look at inelastic interactions of electrons with matter, there are different approaches. One is called ionization. The ionization basically talks about the high energy electrons of the incident beam can transfer critical amount of energy to the inner shells of electron of an atom, leading to the ejection of this electron. The ionization energy is provided by the incident electron, reducing its energy. This leads to an ionization edge in the electron energy loss spectrum, which is abbreviated as EELS. Subsequently, the hole in the inner shell is filled up by an electron with higher energy from an outer shell. This electron gives away a part of its energy, leading to the emission of characteristic X-ray or Auger electrons. Now let us see secondary electrons. So electrons in the conduction or valence band do not need much energy because of low work function to be transferred into vacuum. So therefore the energy of the secondary electrons, which what we call as SE, is very low, that is less than 50 electron, greater than 50 electron volts. The SEs are mainly exploited in SEM. SEM stands for scanning electron microscope. Now let us look at phonons. Phonons are lattice vibrations which are equal to heating the specimen. This effect may lead to the damage of the sample also. Next, plasmons. Plasmons are longitudinal oscillations of free electrons which decay either in photons or in phonons. Now what is this cathodoluminescence? In semiconductors, hit by high energy electrons, electron hole pairs are formed. Filling this hole with an electron from the conduction band leads to the emission of light with a frequency that corresponds to the band gap. Because here we have to note that very high energy beta particles can penetrate to a depth of about centimeter in a tissue and even can damage eye and skin if the source is so strong. So let us further elaborate the understanding of electron interaction with matter. Electron bombardment of a sample is very unique to microprobe analysis, where it produces large number of effects from the target material. Here we have shown the effects produced by electron bombardment on a material. The incident electrons interact with the specimen atoms and are significantly scattered by them. Most of the energy of an electron beam will eventually end up heating up the sample because of the phonon excitation of the atomic lattice. But however, before the electrons come to rest, they undergo two types of scattering. As I told you earlier, elastic and inelastic. In elastic scattering, the electron trajectory changes, but its kinetic energy and velocity remain essentially constant because of large difference between the mass of the electron and the nucleus. This process is known as electron backscattering. Of course, later we will confine the term to backscattered electrons, to those which scatter out of the sample. In inelastic scattering, the trajectory of the incident beam is only slightly perturbed, but energy is lost through interactions with the orbital electrons of the atoms in the specimen. Inelastic interactions produce diverse effects including phonon excitation, that is heating, cathodoluminescence, that is visible light fluorescence, quantum radiation, what is basically known as bremsstrahlung or breaking radiation, characteristic X-ray radiation, plasmon production, which are nothing but secondary electrons, and Auger electron production, which is nothing but ejection of outer shell electrons. Now, two major factors with effect can be detected from the interaction volume. How we can understand that is, this schematic explanation shows relative interaction volumes for various processes for an electron beam in a thin sample. Beam electrons lose energy as they traverse the sample due to interactions with it, and if too much energy is required to produce an effect, it will not be possible to produce it from the deeper portions of the volume. And the second factor is the degree to which an effect, once produced, can be observed is controlled by how strongly it is diminished by absorption and scattering in the sample. For example, although secondary and Auger electrons are produced throughout the interaction volume, they have very low energies and can only escape from a thin layer near the sample surface. Similarly, soft X-rays, which are generally absorbed easier than hard X-rays, will escape more readily from the upper portion of the interaction volume. Absorption is an important phenomenon and it can be understood further. Now, this diagram shows generalized illustration of interaction volumes for various electron specimen interactions. Auger electrons, for example, they are not shown in detail here, emerge from a very thin region of the sample surface, maximum depth of about 50 angstrom units, than secondary electrons. Secondary electron range is 50 to 500 angstroms. So this is how we can understand the relative interaction of volumes for various processes for an electron beam in a thin sample. Let us look at understanding something what is known as Bremsstrahlung loss. It is a process or a radiative collision of light particles. It is a nuclear phenomenon in which fast-moving charged particles passing close to the nucleus loses its energy by radiation. According to electrodynamics, whenever there is an acceleration or a deceleration, what we call as retardation of a charged particle, it loses energy in the form of radiation. Those radiation are called braking radiation or Bremsstrahlung loss. In 1934, two scientists, namely Bethe and Hitler, declared that when an energetic charged particle passes close to an atomic nucleus, its interaction with the strong field of nucleus makes it suffer a large acceleration or a retardation, depending on the type of charge on the particle, that results in the transformation of its energy into electromagnetic radiation, which is usually called the impulse radiation or Bremsstrahlung or braking radiation. This process is also called radiative collision. So, the average loss of energy due to radiative collision of particle can be calculated like, by considering the number of atoms of absorber per unit volume as n, charge of incident photon is taken as Z1, incident particle, and atomic number of the absorber element is taken as Z2, kinetic energy of the particle is taken as E, m0 is the rest mass, and complex function of kinetic energy and rest mass is taken as f of E by m0 c square. Based on this, the average loss of energy can be calculated like this using this formula. This is given by Bethe and Hitler. Using this formula, from this it can be evident that when you take out the constant values, it can be found that the average loss is directly proportional to the energy and also directly proportional to atomic number. We can analyze this through this graph. So this Bremsstrahlung loss will be greater for higher energy particle. For example, for 5 MeV electron, this will be greater than for 1 MeV electron. So this is a radiative collision loss versus energy diagram can be understood like this. Now when you say it is proportional to Z2 square, that is Bremsstrahlung loss is directly proportional to the atomic number of the absorber and therefore will be comparatively very large for Z2 equal to 82 lead than for aluminum, that is 13. So it is inversely proportional to the rest mass. That means the Bremsstrahlung loss is greater for the particles of smaller mass. So thus it becomes very important in case of electrons, positrons, pi mesons and so on than in the case of alpha particle. For positrons, along with ionization and Bremsstrahlung loss, there is also loss due to annihilation radiation. So high energy beta particles produce X-rays what are called as Bremsstrahlung when absorbed, and this effect is more pronounced in heavy and dense absorbers. Let us look at understanding backscattered electrons represented as BSE. Scattering of beam electrons produce backscattered and transmitted electrons as strong electrical field of the specimen's atomic nuclei deflects them. No additional electrons are produced from the sample. While transmitted electrons pass completely through the material after interacting with it, backscattered electrons are ejected from the top surface of the specimen at greater angles. Transmitted and backscattered electrons can have energies ranging from about 50 electron volts up to the accelerating voltage E0. So the number of backscattered electrons produced from a material may be quantified by its backscattering coefficient represented as MB. Now this backscattered coefficient depends on the sample's average atomic number Z, which is calculated using the weight fraction W of each element, like W1 Z1, W2 Z2, etc. The sum can be calculated as Z. Now this is about backscattered electrons. Let us understand about secondary electron emission. When a sample is bombarded with electrons, the strongest region of the emitted electron spectrum is due to the secondary electrons. The secondary electron yield depends on many factors, and it is generally higher for high atomic number targets and at greater angles of incidence. Secondary electrons are produced when an incident electron excites an electron in the sample and loses some of its energy in the process. The excited electron moves towards the surface of the sample, undergoing elastic as well as inelastic collisions until it reaches the surface where it can escape if it still has the sufficient energy. Their energies as a function of E0 and the surface work function EW that defines the amount of energy needed to remove the electrons from the surface of the material. One of the major reasons for coating a non-conductive specimen with a conductive material is to increase the number of secondary electrons that will be emitted from the sample. Secondary electrons by convention are those emitted with energies less than 50 electron volts. That means this is only a small fraction of the elements emitted from the sample. The mean free path length of secondary electrons in numerous materials is approximately 10 angstrom units. That means although electrons are generated throughout the region excited by the incident beam, only those electrons that originate less than 10 angstroms deep in the sample escape to be detected as secondary. This volume of production of these samples is very small compared with black scattered electrons and X-rays. Therefore, the resolution using SE, scattered electrons, is better than either of these and is effectively the same as the electron beam size. The shallow depth of production detected secondary electrons makes them very sensitive to topography, and they are used for scanning electron microscopy, popularly known as SEM. So in this session so far we tried to understand the interaction of gamma rays with matters as three different processes, namely Compton scattering, photoelectric absorption and pair production. Then we tried to understand attenuation coefficients followed by interaction of electrons with matters as elastic interactions and inelastic interactions. And in inelastic also we tried to understand the concept of ionization, secondary electrons, phonons, plasmons and cathodoluminescence. And while studying the electron interaction with matter, we looked at the effects produced by electron bombardment on a material and also relative interaction volumes for various processes for an electron beam in a thin sample. And then we looked at the process or a radiative collision of light particles as a nuclear phenomenon, namely Bremsstrahlung loss and its radiative collision loss versus energy graph helped us to arrive at range energy relation for electrons. And then we tried to understand something called backscattered electrons followed by secondary electron emission. This is what we have seen in this session today.